Welcome back to the Knife Life. There are many hunting knives that are available all over the market, and the sheer number of options can be overwhelming. If you ask various hunters about hunting knives, every single one will give you a different answer because every single one has a different preference. Today, we're going to keep things simple and we're going to talk about 3 knives that you should take with you on a hunt. If you take a look at any of the knife counters at a sporting goods store, they're chock full of various blades of different sizes and shapes and so on. Some of these blades are pretty specialized. If you really wanted to, you could have a specialized knife for every little task involved with cleaning a critter. On the other hand, who wants to spend that much money or lug that much steel out into the field with them?
Just 2 more knife bags.
There are also kits of varying quality and usefulness, but whenever I go hunting, I take just 3 knives with me. A small knife, a large knife, and a medium-sized knife. Let's start with the most important one. Contrary to what many people believe, the small knife in your kit is the most useful hunting knife. A good knife, only a couple inches long, can perform every aspect of dressing an animal. A small blade allows you to get in and make the required precise cuts for both skinning and gutting. Its size also makes it easier to avoid cutting things that you don't want to. As my fellow veteran hunters know, nobody is happy when an organ gets punctured. When selecting my small knife, there are a couple of features that I look for. I want a blade 3 to 4 inches long, with the point sweeping back up away from the cut. The point must also be sufficient in order to penetrate the hide. With this setup, the knife is capable of dressing an entire animal by itself. If you have a knife that meets these requirements, sharpen it, and you're good to go. A good example is this knife that I was gifted. It has accompanied me into the field multiple times, and it has worked admirably. This knife can be used for the entire dressing process if necessary, from slitting the throat, to skinning, to gutting. Many pocket knives, like this, work very well in this role as well. The only disadvantage to a folding knife, though, is having to clean the mess out of the inside of the grip when you are done. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it can still be a bit of a pain. I recommend avoiding the big-bellied skinners such as this. The continuous curve of the blade allows for easily controllable cuts and skinning, but they don't let me get into small areas such as the knee joints, and they don't work that great for gutting or any other breaking down of an animal. They also don't allow you to easily slip the tip underneath the skin and cut from the inside out, avoiding the hair as much as possible. One specialty feature I really like on my knife is a gut hook. While you don't actually need one, I find that it makes opening the belly much easier and less prone to accidents without adding weight or additional tooling to your kit. One side effect of the gut hook that I like on this knife is that it makes the tip a little bit less acute and less likely to poke through something I don't want it to. This is very handy for skinning. If you are looking for a decent entry-level knife, I really like these old-timer blades with gut hooks. If you want to upgrade your knife, but have it usable as an everyday pocket knife as well, Spyderco Delica is one of my favorite knives for dressing as well. I will leave links for both knives in the description below. Now, while a small blade is capable of doing everything, it is handy to have another blade with you for some of the larger jobs. This brings us to large knives have had a place in hunting since knives have existed. Hunts orchestrated by nobles in Europe made use of hunting swords to finish off game instead of wasting another shot. Bowie knives are often seen as being synonymous with Western hunting, but as discussed earlier, it's not usually the big knife that gets most of the work done. I like to carry a big knife to get some of the larger jobs done easier. Slitting the throat, removing the head, and cutting to the breastbone to prep for the saw, or some of the jobs that I use a larger blade for. Just like the small knife, there are a number of blades that one can choose from. The only requirement for this blade is that it needs to be able to thrust and cut. Hair and fur makes for surprisingly good armor, and it will dull the blade quickly and greatly reduce the efficacy of your cuts. It is best to start your cuts by thrusting in past the hair and then cutting out. A good sharp blade should allow you to slit the throat and remove the head with minimal effort. One of the knives I've been using for this recently is this custom daunting by Mickey Yurko. It cuts very aggressively and is great for removing the head. However, I found that a daunting's geometry doesn't line up with some of the other tasks. Bowie style knives work well for this work, but my favorite so far has actually turned out to be the Tatang knife made by Blackhawk. The belly of the blade allows for more precise cutting, such as along the breastbone, but the tip works well for thrusting. This makes getting past hair and skin easy and opening up the neck for gutting easy. If you're interested in a Tatang, I will leave a link as well in the description below. With our large blade addressed, let's move on to the medium knife. The medium-sized knife is in that awkward stage between being too large to do what your small knife does and being too small to be convenient for the larger jobs. Typically, the blade length for these is somewhere between 5 to 7 inches. If I had to leave a knife behind, this would be the one. That said, the medium knife does have its uses. It's handy for the jobs where you want to be a bit more compact, but still want more edge to cut with. I use the medium knife for cutting the skin around the knee joints, to prep for the saw, dressing in the pelvic area, and clean up on the inside of the carcass. This knife is only for cutting, so the edge and not the tip is important for this blade. I prefer medium blades with straight blades and a swept tip. The knife that I use for this is a custom knife from Mora in Sweden. Its longer blade provides me with extra cutting power I sometimes need, and the sweep of the blade allows for a finer, more controlled cuts when needed. A similar production blade to this would be the Frontiersman knife by Buck. Another blade that works well is another Buck knife, their General knife. This is one of the knives that my father takes with him on his hunts. It has a bit more of a tip than I would prefer, but it still works pretty well. I will leave links to both of these knives in the description below as well. If you are first starting out, keep it simple. If you have a decent pocket knife, sharpen it, and you are good to go. Get the small knife. Again, it's the one that can do everything you need it to do. If you don't have one, check out some of the knives that I recommended, or borrow some from a friend of yours and start learning what works for you. Once you have your knives, watch some of my other videos about sharpening and maintaining knives so that you can get the most out of them. For the experienced hunters out there, I know that there was at least one thing that you disagreed with me on in this video. So leave your thoughts in the comments below for new hunters to benefit from your experience as well. And you might bring up something really important that I missed. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time, stay safe and keep living the knife life.